Hello everyone! Join this kosher core as she explores and learns about Article 370 and its impact on Kashmiri pundits. Namaskar. I am Shria Dembi. I am a 14-year-old Kashmiri pundit and I live in California, USA. I will be starting 9th grade at American High School this fall. I am very thankful and excited for this opportunity to learn more about my community and its history. I'm going to be talking about Article 370 in its past, present, and future. And here's a little bit of background. On the 5th of August of 2019, the Government of India revoked Article 370. The article was inserted to the Indian Constitution on the 17th of October 1949. It was put there as a temporary provision and gave Kashmir the right to create its own constitution, a separate flag, and freedom to make their own laws. A reason people opposed this is because it barred Indians from outside the state to purchase property there or settle there. It also deprives the state's female residents of property rights if they marry a so-called outsider. This also applies to their children. During Modi's time of running for Prime Minister, he informed the public that he wanted this article to get revoked, and as I mentioned before, it got revoked. Removing the article removed several land restrictions that came with it, and this caused the prices for the land to go higher since there was more demand for it. This benefited the landowners. Many people also believe that Jammu and Kashmir would be safer under the Indian laws when it comes to violence and terrorism. So if there were so many reasons to get rid of the article, why didn't we get rid of it earlier? The reason for this is because in the article itself, it states that you would need to meet with the Constituent Assembly and get permission before voiding the article. But that assembly wasn't there after 1954. So in 2019, using a presidential order, the president of J&K said that it would now mean legislative assembly. This order also stated that they would add Ladakh as a territory without a legislative, but J&K would still have a legislative. Now let's talk about struggles. Article 370 made Kashmiri pundits a minority and hurt diversity there by a lot since many people couldn't live there. Many Kashmiri pundits had to leave their homes and mainly had to live in camps, and they faced multiple hardships. They lost access to their culture, temples, history, language, homes, resources, time, and opportunities. This caused the development of Kashmiri pundits to go back by lots of years. It also caused mental, physical, and emotional trauma to many. Now that we've talked about the article's effects, I'm going to dial it back a bit and talk about its origin. It all started in 1949 when Article 370 was drafted into the Indian Constitution. When BJP won the parliamentary elections, they discussed about scrapping the article as well as 35A that came along with it. The reason it was brought in the first place is because they signed the Instrument of Accession in 1947, which said that India would make Jammu and Kashmir a special provision. The BJP said that they would scrap it to get Jammu and Kashmir on the same footing as the rest of India. They also stated that it would bring development to the region. What was the impact of revoking the article, you may ask? Here are some key points and changes. Along with revoking Article 370, 35A was also revoked. This removed strict land restrictions. Then, Jammu and Kashmir was a state with a special status. Now, Jammu and Kashmir is a union territory. Before, they had another flag, constitution, and anthem. Now, they have to adapt the Indian flag, follow laws in the Indian constitution, and sing the national anthem. Before, Ladakh was part of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, it is a separate state union. Earlier, no outsider, so-called, could settle in the state, but now, any citizen of India can settle there. Maybe if the article was revoked before, Kashmiri Pandits wouldn't have had to flee their homes with nothing, and there would be less terrorism and violence over there. Many people disagreed with revoking the article because of the way the government decided to implement it. They took away the internet for over 100 days and put political leaders there on house arrest. This caused an uprising in protests. As I mentioned before when I was talking about suffrage, that Kashmiri Pandits were reduced to a minority in their own homes and had to flee. And now I'm going to tell you reasoning about why they had to flee. In the late 1989 and early 1990s, Kashmiri Pandits were forced to flee, leaving everything behind in order to keep their families safe. Many of the refugee Kashmiri Pandits have been living in camps and terrible conditions ever since. Many still have not recovered. Many people lost everything: family, friends, homes, resources, and many still live in terrible conditions in camps. I have myself lost ancestors, and some of my family still live in camps. And as I mentioned before, if they would have revoked the article back then, many people would still be alive, still be peacefully living in their homeland. Now I'm going to talk about the future and returning of KPs, which means Kashmiri Pandits if you didn't already know. Many have only been able to visit or see their homeland from far, but they haven't been able to stay there because it's unsafe. Many do stay there with a risk. Now people can finally feel safe in their homes as the article is removed and they're not a minority in their own homeland anymore. Article 370 caused many issues, and without it, Kashmir would have been a more safe and well-protected place, and many of those residents wouldn't have had to flee. The removal of the article caused many changes, and many of them for the better. What I learned throughout this process. What I learned when researching the article is about when and how and who it was made by. I also learned about why it was removed and the impact the removal had. I learned about who removed it and who supported it and who didn't. I learned about why many people did not support it and why many people did support it. I learned about the removal and the process it took to remove it. I learned a lot about this topic and I'm so glad I did, because now I have a better understanding of my ancestor and culture's past and the struggles they had to go through because of this article. And I also learned about why the removal of this article is going to impact our future. My opinion on Article 370. My opinion on this situation is that I'm glad that they finally revoked the article. But I do not support the means they did this by. They should not have implemented it by putting leaders on house arrest and taking away the internet for over 100 days. This is just unfair to the people who live there. If they would have taken away the article before, it would have been better, since many would still be living in their hometowns with peace and harmony with their friends and family who they lost during this process. They wouldn't have had to only go there to visit and could actually live there feeling safe now. Whatever happened, happened, and it's terrible and should not happen to anybody, but I'm glad that my ancestors survived. This just shows how strong we are. Dhanyavad.